Hiya, so perhaps we are live now. Usual thing, I will just wait for someone to be able to confirm in the chat that one, we are live, and two, that you can hear me. And also to check, I usually do a little test in Twitch as well to check the actual chat thing, but I forgot to do that this time. So if half a minute goes by, no one says anything, I'll get suspicious. And I suppose we will have all heard the news that Method are now on 8 out of 9. This presents potential issues for what I was going to do this weekend. But because I'm not sure, as some of you may know, the plan was for Final Boss this weekend, which is Bay's interview series for different classes and specs, that I was going to be on there for Retribution Paladins this Saturday. He hasn't said anything different, actually. The other thing I should just point out is I have now got a second monitor. I'm not still used to using it. It's probably not set up ideally as well. I always imagine of two monitors it should sort of be a bit like that, but I have to turn right round to see this one. But you know, that's the way that is. And but because you know Method of now on 8 out of 9, it is conceivable that they will kill Jaden by the weekend. In which case, I know that Bay also, you know, given that he interviews the great and the good, will want to interview the people who get that first kill, which Method are in pole position for, but we shouldn't read too much into that. Exorcists have more than once already come from behind. Well, at least once come from behind, I should say. So you never know. But yes, if that did happen, then I strongly suspect they'd put the Retribution Paladin one back a week to do this one. I'm not sure. I think so anyway, because I was listening to he streamed something. Can't remember when now. Like in the last couple of days, because he put it up on his YouTube, and I was sort of listening to that while I was doing something else, and he did sort of mention that in it, but he hasn't said anything to me yet. Well, the thing is, it potentially was mathematically unkillable, but it has been nerfed. So, you know, it may have, you know, people may have been basing that on what it was like originally. I know it's only been out a week, but it has been nerfed. I gather twice, even though there hasn't been a great fan. Yeah, well, there hasn't been an announcement about it. They don't always announce things, but it has been nerfed. Not just the health, but the damage it does. But it's still very, very impressive. As someone from my guild pointed out, when you look at the roster that killed it in WoW Progress, and you look at because people who know have said so, what was I going to say now? Yeah, the item level and artifact level of many of the characters in on that kill are not extreme by any means. They're on sort of my level of gear, and I'm looking at it and thinking, oh, I mean, I know you just know Ret Paladins on that fight, but I think about I couldn't possibly maintain 1.5 million DPS, even if it were a pure single target fight, which it's not, because you have to keep moving to soak, and you have to keep moving to move the daggers into the right place, and you have to keep moving way out for the other boom ability. You have to keep switching to the maiden to break the shield. You have to make sure that you don't take too much health off the maiden, and blah, 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 blah. So, absolutely insane. But yeah, it is, you would think now, because I mean, I looked at it, I had mixed feelings about, before this happened, I had mixed feelings about this thing with Avatar, because on the one hand, I'm actually really supportive of gear check bosses. I'd see no reason why there shouldn't be a couple of gear check bosses in it, because I think a better way of like spreading out content for a lot of people is to say, look, you know, you get up this far, and now what you need to do is to gear up a bit. So, you know, you've come to a wall here. Next week you'll do your farm bosses again, get more gear, then you push through the wall or something like that. Hi, Recondo. But that's not really what's happened. So, yeah, so you had this big backlog. So, first of all, Method were the first to get to 7 out of 9, weren't they, as well? And then Exorcist, and then it might have been Limit, I think. I can't remember. But then you all of a sudden had loads of guilds, over a dozen guilds, all on 7 out of 9. And eventually Method have squeezed through. And so on the one hand, I was disappointed that it was just for the sake of an extra bit of gear that this boss was holding people up. Like, but at the same time, it was quite good that there was this thing holding people up. But we'll just have to see what sort of shape Kill Jaden's in. But I would be amazed if it wasn't dead by the weekend. I'd be pleasantly surprised. You know, if it takes a whole week just to progress on Kill Jaden, I'd be delighted. But I really can't think that it would be. That sounds a bit unlikely to me. My own mythic race is a little bit behind that, of course. Unfortunately, we're only out on 3. We should have been 4. There was a lot of there's a lot of people doing the usual thing yesterday. I'd almost be annoyed, but unfortunately, I was not blameless as well. You can't. Why? I'm having a right issue with people and spoilers now. You can't have a Harry Potter spoiler because Harry Potter, the last book, came out years ago. So can't be a spoiler. Yeah, at a certain point, something's not a spoiler. I was having that issue when I talked about my video with Agrimar. People going, oh, spoiler, and some people going mental on it. I was like, not a spoiler. It's the name of a boss. I haven't revealed anything about the storyline. I've mentioned the name of a boss who happens to be a major lore character. It's not my fault. That's Blizzard's fault. Yeah, well. I completely forgot what I was going to say now. Someone remind me. Oh, yeah, Mythic. So we did our usual trick of pissing about for a full night on Sisters of the Moon yesterday. Last pull of the night, we're there. I didn't know, actually. I thought it was going on. I was saying on the stream, this is going on too long. We're going to wipe. But I was wrong. We were only on 8 minutes at the point where we wiped. So we had still a good 2.5 minutes to kill it. And we were on like... It was under 15% at the point at which I said that. But it was, you know, it was less than 8 minutes at that point. And then one thing just wiped us. One thing. And it was the same stupid thing that had been wiping us all night, which is people DPS whoring and causing lots of by crossing the phase line instead of just going, I'll just have to take DPS off for a second. It's like literally 1 or 2 seconds. But I would be really, really annoyed, unfortunately, on that last pull, which should have been a kill. If we hadn't have done that thing, it would have been a kill. And it wasn't a skill-based thing that was going wrong. It was a numbskull thing. And we would have been 4 out of 9, sorry. Just these small margins. It's so intense. And but unfortunately, although I don't think I did too badly yesterday, I was very distracted yesterday, I have to say. I had a really bad time at work at the moment. But yeah, on that last one, my concentration did slip at that time as well. So I can't really go shouting at anyone because I've got my fingerprints on that wipe as well. Even though I behaved myself all the rest of the night. But there you go. That's unfortunately how it works. So what we should do now, tomorrow will just be the split runs again. So gearing up. Then quickly on Thursday knock over the first 3 bosses are. I mean, they were straightforward the first time we killed them. And although we're going to obviously, I suppose, rotate a few people in that didn't kill them last week, it should be straightforward this week as well, even easier because of the gear. And we should kill Sisters on Thursday. So then the thing will be, hi Jack, the thing will be getting Desolate Host. So I'll have to make sure that I watch some videos again on that, because I think I watched a couple. It's very difficult with Desolate Host because you only can see it, unless you get a multi-viewpoint of thing, you can only see it from one side. And it may not be the side you're doing it on. So I'll have to make sure that I'm okay with that one again. So, because what I'm hoping we do is get our split runs under control on Wednesday. On Thursday, first 3 bosses really quickly, like in an hour, hopefully. Then maybe Sister of the Moon in the next hour. If we just stop the pissing about, if we just say, you know, if people just get it into their heads, just stop messing about and we'll just kill it. And then a couple of hours of Desolate Host. That is what I'm hoping for. And then, if we kill Desolate Host, then we've got Mistress Sassine, who will be the first uber difficult boss for us at any rate. But there we go. But anyway, hi to everyone that's in. Obviously, what this is as usual, anything that anyone wants to talk about, like World of Warcraft related, is you just go for it there. Otherwise, I'll just sort of ramble on a little bit about what seems to be going on at the moment. Including, as I say, I have got now, less than 240 hours before I'm off for 6 weeks and can actually spend a bit more time on the channel. Did you get lucky this weekend? High Lord Ring, Scarlet Chess Piece, 2 Sargeras trinkets in 1 week. Yes, I would say that's fairly lucky. I got 1 decent trinket. Cinders still won't drop. You know, I've now done, what have I done? 2 heroic clears on my Paladin, 2 normal clears, and a mythic Goroth. And the Cinders trinket still hasn't dropped. But it's dropped 3 times in the other split run. So that's, I can't remember that it's 2 normal and 1 heroic, or 2 heroic and 1 normal. It really doesn't matter. I'd take the normal one at the moment. Although I would miss, I have to say, I'm using a haste stat stick trinket at the moment, which is really handy actually. And actually, when I got it quite recently. I was disappointed when I got it. I looked at it and thought, ugh. But in actual fact, I'm actually using it a lot. Do I think Sargeras is way too easy? No. We always get this pattern at the moment. It looks easy because Method are bowling over the bosses, but they always do that. You know, the top guild, the world first kill of the last boss, which still isn't dead yet, always comes in the 2nd week, or has done for, that's been the pattern for some time now. So they haven't done for some time at any rate, correct me if I'm wrong, in the 1st week of Mythic release, but they do it in the set, or what was, would have been heroic a couple of years ago, but they do it in the 2nd, and that's the way it's going to be now. They're going to kill Jaden in this coming reset. Obviously, for Method, the reset hasn't started yet. How many people in my... I don't know, like, we've had, as I say, I think we've had 3 drop, and someone coined 1. In terms of who's using it, though, the other Rep Paladin is using his. I think the only ones who are really keen on it at the moment are Demon Hunters. I'm not sure. I haven't really inspected them to see who's actually using them or not. But it could well be that our Demon Hunters are, but of course they're not going to be in on every boss. So I don't know. All I know is I don't. But I do have the other one, so I mustn't be greedy. I mustn't complain. I've got a 925 with a socket vial of ceaseless toxins, which is fairly nice. That's all right. That does a reasonable amount of damage. Several % of my damage can be accounted for by that. But no, I don't think Timur Sargeras is easy. I think it's, if the only criticism I would have at all, if I had any criticism, and I'm not going to, is, so far anyway, that because it's only 9 bosses, it can seem that way. Like the first 3 bosses are straightforward, but they're straightforward for experienced Mythic raiding groups. But what about the ones who aren't so experienced and wanted to go into it? You can't make it too difficult because they need some progress. There are some guilds who at the end of the 1st week were on 1 out of 9. Now, you can't... you have to give them something. You have to give them the first boss. Because otherwise, a group like this, they get no... if they've got nothing killed after a full week, then that can be off-putting. So you give them a boss. And then the next 2, as I say, there are plenty of guilds that were on 1 out of 9, plenty that were on 2 out of 9, and then quite a lot that were on 3 out of 9, and so on. And then after the first 3 bosses, just like in Nighthold, the 2, obviously I can only speak for Sisters personally, but you can look at it and look at the pattern and see what other people are saying about them. So the next 2 are a step, well, the next one, Sisters is a step up. Desolate Host is supposed to be a lot easier than Sisters, but it's still probably, I don't know, maybe that's a step up still from the first 3. Then you've got Mistress Sassine, who is a big step up. And then you've got Maiden of Vigilance, who just seems to be a weird boss. It's going to be, some guilds are taking a lot of pulls to kill it. Some guilds not so many. I don't know whether that's because there's a certain element of RNG to it. And then obviously Avatar is just insane. And who knows what Kill Jaden's like. No, I don't know what it's like for other classes. For Retribution Paladins, even one, obviously it depends on item level trinket. You can't always say, well, this trinket's really good. But on a, you know, item level all sort of being equal, Cinders as you being the only one in your group having it is still very, very good. So I would use it on every fight probably. Excuse me. If I got it, which hopefully I will tomorrow. You know, because we'll be doing another heroic kill. It will probably drop in the other split run. That is the downside of doing split runs. The stuff you really want drops in the other. But again, as I say, I have to be fair. I have got some nice items as well. I am on at least my 4-piece tier 20. I keep forgetting now what tier we're on. Tier 20. Even though I would still quite like the gloves. I don't have the tier 20 gloves. So I have to use the chest, which is a decent piece, but I like to use the legendary chest on AoE fights, so that doesn't make that possible. But no, Cinders is good for Rets. And I think it's also supposed to be quite good for Demon Hunters. Whereas for some other classes, yes. I think for like Warriors, it's good if a lot have got it. But then they'd also have to be quite close to each other. There are some fights where you are quite close to each other. Like Sisters of the Moon would be a classic one, where you are actually pretty close, because you're on the boss like all fight. There's ads in like the Owl, but that's also tanked on the boss. You've got a 920 and a 910 from Kil'jaeden. Yeah, the one, well, Spectre of the Betrayer, I think is what you talk about, Kil'jaeden. Yeah, one of our Demon Hunters got a 930 one of those. On our heroic Kil'jaeden kill this week, as in the one that's ending for us in the EU. Yeah, that's right. Spawns the void things. The thing is, though, it's quite good, I suppose, otherwise it would get mental, is you can't see it. Only the person whose trinket is can see them. No one else can see them. So it's quite funny. We were doing Mythic Goroth this week, and he said, was it Mythic? It was Goroth on some mode anyway. It must have been Mythic because it was after, because he got on Kil'jaeden. And he said, oh, because we'd moved the boss away. He says, can you move it back to where my Spectre is? And everyone, the tanks had to say, we don't know where it is. Can't see it. So we had to try and direct it back onto it. So yeah, no one. Well, you can imagine if everyone had it, the whole place would just be rammed with these things. And how would you know which one was yours? So you can only see your own. So no one else can see your elementals. But that's just the way that one is. I'm just trying to. Actually, I did do our Mythic progress thing here. I'm just trying to see. Is he in? I think it might have been this one. There was a particular point of the fight when the boss got moved away. Oh, that's why I died. Don't look at that bit. Can't remember now. But I'm pretty sure it was on this one. And it was. I don't think it was my fault. There was a weird thing happened on Mythic. Like, what I thought at first was happening was the... Okay, I nearly died there, but I didn't actually die. Oh, God. It's too finicky. Right, here it is. This is where I die. Now, I thought what happened was that if you stood too far close to the spike, it treats you as not being behind the spike. But that's not what happened. You can see there, the spike has just suddenly disappeared. So I'm running out from this thing that he's about to cast. I've gone behind a spike, and the spike has just gone. And then, boom. And nothing I can do about it. So I'm going to have to watch out for that one next time I do that on Mythic. I'm not sure whether I'll be doing it on Mythic this week, as I say, because the other ret had to miss out on the kill, so I may have to swap out. Yes, well, I have them tilted up like this. This is because this is the position you're supposed to be in if you're going to be on a computer, especially for any other time. You're supposed to look slightly down at it, as opposed to up, because you get neck strain otherwise. So this is ergonomic design, I think they call it. But yes, you are supposed to. I'm not 7 feet tall now. I'm not even 6 feet tall. But you are supposed to look down on your monitor slightly, not like down like that, but you're supposed to look slightly down because that puts less strain on your neck. And as I say, when you are going to be on a computer for a very long period of time, then you should, yeah, you do have to sort of consider that. You don't want to be getting yourself strain, because that won't do your long-term health any good. So yeah, I am looking down. I think that's actually why I've put the text up here today, so I'm sort of forced to look up every now and then. Unfortunately, I can't have a webcam right in the middle of my screen, because that would solve the whole problem. But yeah. And then, but as I say, the first few bosses were really straightforward. This is just, you can, I mean, we wiped a couple of times, I think, on it. And then that boss. But the Sisters of the Moon is a really, really long fight. Where is it? This was, I mean, this is the one, this is our last pull. And we got, can I get it at the end? I'm just going to play it for a little bit. Like, at this point, I can't actually read it. I've got it too small. How I like in Tomb of Sargeras, it's quite good so far. This is where a few died. Is it better than Nighthold? I think it is actually so far. It's difficult to tell exactly. The downside, of course, is at the moment I'm like in Nighthold, there were no fights where I thought, you know what, I'm going to be useless on that fight. It's not the same thing in Tomb of Sargeras. I'm looking ahead at least 2 fights where I'm thinking I'm not going to be of any use. Which is Mistress Sassine. I don't know. I mean, it depends how it works out, but I'm not entirely sure about that one. So Jack's saying, it's quite ironic this week. There is an option in the Warcraft log website where you can even watch the video of the fight at the replay. I don't know, the actual video bit, I don't know how to actually enable that. I have to say. But I am aware of that option. I did actually mention it. Ironically, the Warcraft logs video I've got coming out is already out on Patreon at the moment, but will be coming out on YouTube on Thursday. Is talking about the replay function, and I briefly show that because I explain all the buttons at the bottom, but I don't know how to actually link a video in with it, I'm afraid. So you're still on Mistress Heroic. Well, yeah, see, I don't know that I'd be any use on this one. I was saying yesterday actually on the stream, I've scripted, because I've done, like, I'm doing like heroic. I don't like to call them guides because they're not strategy guides. When you put guides, people expect strategy guides. I don't believe in, I mean, other people do strategy guides for a start anyway. And also I don't really believe in strategy guides because different guilds should do fights in slightly different ways anyway. But tips and tricks, shall we say, advice for dealing with mechanics on a personal level. And I did it for the first 3 bosses at the weekend. But it's quite an involved process. It actually takes quite a long time to do the editing on it. Now, I've got the next 3 bosses I was wanting to get done today. Whether I will after this, I don't know. I'll have to see what time I've got. I've got it all scripted, but I need to narrate it and then edit it, and it may not get done until Friday at this rate. But if you've got any particular issues on Mistress, then by all means ask, and I'll see if I can help there. If it is, most bosses on Heroic are not likely to be a gear issue unless you're really badly geared. No, well, they wouldn't have done anything today with Res. If they were going to do anything today, they would have announced it yesterday. I was hoping for an announcement yesterday, but I was hoping for an announcement the week before as well, and I didn't get that either. So the problem is that we're looking artificially good. Like on this fight, for example, in fact, basically every pull, apart from the one, I think I did die on one, I have to say. But apart from that, my damage was looking very competitive. You'd look at it and you'd think, okay, because what's supposed to be wrong with Rets at the moment? I don't want to talk too much about Rets in this because I have a different live show for that. But I don't know when that's going to be. But I'll come to that in a minute. you know, what's supposed to be wrong with it is single target damage. You look at this fight, it says, well, this is a single target fight. And you look at the damage that Rets are doing, and it's actually, well, that I was doing, and so was the other Ret in the group. It was actually really, we were right at the top. But the reason for that is because people keep dying. So we keep getting this retribution buff. You know. But when people stop dying, you don't get that anymore. The arrow soaking. Well, it's not just a personal thing, because there's the Hydra shot, I think you're talking about. I mean, where that tends to go wrong, where it goes wrong for us, is when melee get it especially and don't move backwards. And the problem with that is, first of all, not a lot of people can see they've even got it, so of course you're not going to have people standing in the way. But second of all, if you've got a couple of melee doing that and they're straight in, someone else in melee could actually be soaking both without realising it, and they get one shot. Well, that's just stupid. It's selfish and stupid. It's counterproductive. But the other problem is, sometimes when people get this Hydra shot, they all just move backwards out, which in theory is a good thing to do. But if what it means is you're all sort of spreading out on one side of the boss, but you've got a load of range on the other side of the boss, they can't get in time. So you should actually move around the boss and try and spread yourselves out. So there is personal responsibility element to that, which covers not only the person with the Hydra shot being intelligent, but also other people around them. They absolutely need to take the retribution buff out. Yeah, I've already talked about that enough. It's stupid. What do I think of 8 out of 9 already in the first week? I didn't think we were going to get to this point, because the last I heard, obviously when you get to a point where Method got to 7 out of 9 days ago, and then it's stacking up, isn't it? Like, first of all, you had 1 guild, then 2, then 3, and all of a sudden it's over a dozen guilds all at that point. You can see it's a bit of a guild check wall. And then the last I heard, Method were all spamming Mythic plus dungeons trying to get better gear, which obviously they got because they've managed to push through it now. And in your team, 3 people gets an icon and the group soaks one of the icons. I hope you don't mean assigned groups, because what if all 3 of the ones who get targeted are in the same group? I mean, it should just be the case that everyone is responsible for getting into one of the beams, and that the people with the beams are responsible for not only moving back, but making sure they're nicely spread out around the boss, or at least on the side of the boss where the raid are. Well, again, without going too much into it, our builder Blade of Justice is a behemoth because it's been buffed by so many things now. It doesn't do more than my Templar's Verdict though, so I don't know, you've got a funny set of gear. It does a lot of damage. It doesn't do more than my Templar's Verdict though. Templar's Verdict still does more for me. So I'm not quite sure what weird gear set you've got or talent set that makes that happen. Hello, Nico. But yeah, I mean, it is obviously natural when people, and you get this in any sort of guild, if people are not willing to take on the personal responsibility, you try and come up with some strategy to say, right, when this happens, you do this. But things like that can then go wrong. I mean, you could just say, well, you're unlucky if 3 people in the same group get the Hydra shot, and just wipe and go again. But it seems silly to wipe to something like that. So Chloriandus, look at some of the parts of top rets on Warcraft, and some are nearly 100% even on mythic difficulty encounters. When you say 100%, do you mean the actual logs? By definition, someone's got to be 100%. The 100% is based on the top pass. So whoever gets the top pass, 100%. Potentially even the top few. Depends how many people have done passes on it. So it doesn't matter how bad you are, someone's got to get the 100%. It doesn't matter how good you are, someone's got to get like 0. Usually someone who dies on the pull, to be fair. A lot of it is, of course, skill. Anyone who gets like the top ranks is skillful. There's no doubt about that. They have to play correctly. But there is also luck or cheesing, because if you look at any top pass for Retribution Paladin, it includes a hefty uptime on the Retribution buff. Also, there'll be other things that play in their favour as well. You know, like kill time being suitable for them or something like that. Or being able to do a lot of AoE. Because that's another thing. Let's say you've got a fight like Harjatan, for example. We've got Murlocs. If you've got a lot of people in your raid that can do really good AoE, they'll die really quickly. But if you don't, then they'll die more slowly, which means you get to AoE for longer, so your numbers look bigger. Parsers is just like, you know, with Warcraft logs, you upload your log. And not everyone uploads logs, you've got to bear in mind as well. So it's not covering every player, but everyone who uploads them. And not everyone makes them public as well. So if they're not public, they're not featuring either. And then it's just a ranking of the damage numbers posted. And the percentiles are just how well you've done compared to the rest of the people playing that same spec. So if the higher the number, the closer you are to the top. So if you're actually at the top, then obviously you've got 100 because you're at the top. And if you're the worst, then you're at 0. Even if that value is a respectable number, which it never is, because the ones on 0 are the ones who... I mean, I got a 0. If you die very close to the pull, then you're obviously going to get 0 on that, because you'll do almost no damage. But yeah, there's an awful lot to it beyond just... Like, you couldn't... Someone who gets like a rank 1, for example, if they'd have done it in a different group, say a different guild or something like that, they wouldn't have got the rank 1, even if they did the same thing. But at the same time, they still had to demonstrate a lot of skill to be able to do it. Because even if you've got the right circumstances, the right opportunities, you still have to be able to take advantage of them. And it will also include a fair amount of whoring as well. Like people who regularly get rank 1s, they will always focus on their damage to the exclusion of everything. I'm not saying they would deliberately do things to wipe the raid, but they will sail very, very close to the wind at the very least. And some will. There are some people who do, because they don't care. They would actually rather the raid wiped than they didn't get a high rank. They would just rather... If a bad situation occurred, which meant that they couldn't get a high number, they would actually just rather the raid wiped, and they did it again. Which is totally the opposite way, I think. I just want the boss dead. And I don't care how long I have to take DPS off. I mean, where we were going wrong... Again, it's really fiddly on this one. I can't do it very easily. It'd be easier to show in phase 1 on Moon. So this phase obviously is coming closer and closer. And on Mythic, like on Heroic and Normal, you just go across as you like. Or, you know, you've got this stacking debuff, whichever phase you're in. And you just go across and it changes to the other debuff. You do it as much as you like. But on Mythic, the whole raid gets a dot every time someone goes across. And it resets the duration of it every time a new one goes, if it hasn't worn off. So you have to carefully control who crosses this line. You cannot just cross it as you want. So what's supposed to happen here is we've got our melee in 2 groups. So there's one group who are going to go across to it first, like of three melee. So they're supposed to go across to it. This is the debuff here. So they have to wait for that debuff to wear off, and then they're all going to go across. And then that debuff will happen again. So that's them going across. There should have been 3 there, and it's showing 2. And then it's now my group of 3 players who are going to wait for that to come to us. But again, we also wait for that to wear off. But you see, it didn't quite wear off. So it's now gone to 5, because before it wore off, a couple more people went across. They didn't wait. So now it's at 5, and that's doing loads of damage to us. Above 5 is going to do stupid damage to us. So I'm now having to wait. I'm moving back. I'm moving out of melee range just to make sure that I don't do too much damage. And then I've chosen to go across. So I only took DPS off for a second or 2. But just to make absolutely certain that we didn't stack it up again. But because there are some people who want to focus on their damage and they will stick to the boss no matter what, they won't do that. And that's what was wiping us a lot. It wasn't the only thing. There were also glaives. Glaives are really difficult as well. I took more than my fair share of glaive damage, I have to say. But I don't think glaives wiped us very often. This thing wiped us most often. But there you go. That is the what's happened? Oh yeah, that is the nature of, as I say, people focusing on DPS more than just focusing on getting the boss down. Especially when it's a first kill. Like, I could understand it more, even though it still annoys me, if people were doing it when we're... And I don't... When I say on farm, I don't mean when we've killed this boss. I mean when the whole instance is on farm. Because that's another thing. Some people think, okay, we'll behave ourselves until we kill it for the first time, but then the next week when we come to it, it's on farm now, isn't it? But the problem is, the more you wipe on a farm boss, the less time you've got for your progress bosses. So you're still eating into progress time. Because every guild is... Most guilds, obviously some guilds raid all the time they can. But most guilds have a set amount of time to raid, don't they? And once that time's used up... Like, I mean, we'd have ordinarily liked to have gone again. If we'd have had another half an hour yesterday, at the end of it, if we'd have got to the point where we got yesterday's raid with another half an hour, it would have been dead. Because we could have shown people... As soon as you get to a point where it's clear you could kill it, then something changes in people's minds. And all of a sudden, they play properly. But it's very often the case you have to get to the point where it's clearly going to be a kill. Well, even... It's only... Like... I mean, you can argue it's farm as soon as you killed it once, even. It's just that you still have to treat the boss with respect. I mean, there are some bosses in Nighthold, even. If we go back there... I mean, we went back and we did Elisand and Gul'dan. And we made a bit of a mess of Gul'dan, but if we'd have made a complete mess of it, we'd have still wiped on it. I mean, we know we only got through it because of our better gear now. It was not a good pull, but it was a one-shot. But if we'd have made, as I say, if we'd have made a complete pig's ear of it, if people had just completely ignored mechanics, we still would have wiped. Like, for example, on Mythic Gul'dan, we've now got so much gear that we have to take DPS off Gul'dan in the second phase. Otherwise, we'll spawn Illidan too quickly, and we'll probably get blown off the platform. Now, if people hadn't have done that and would have pushed him too quickly, then we'd have still wiped. We'd have wiped because we'd have just all been blown off, or something equally horrible would have happened. Like, I mean, it's okay if I don't mind too much if people DPS horror a bit, as long as it's going to die, as long as the boss is going to die. But as soon as we wipe from it, even if it's just one wipe, then it needs to stop, because that's time taken. That's a whole pull on the progress boss. Like, we lost, you know, the Sisters of the Moon, a kill is about 10 to 11 minutes. So if you wipe on a farm boss, that's your 10 to 11 minutes, probably. And you could have had another pull on it. But anyway. That's that one. We'll just have... is there anything special on Mythic Kill Jaden? I'm not sure. I haven't looked at it. Because it's a long way from me doing it. I try and focus on what's on the bosses that I need to do right now. I mean, we won't even know if there's a special... If you mean like a special phase, an extra phase, that's not there on Mythic at all. Who knows? Might be. I mean, I sort of suggested that potentially an extra bit with Valen involved, because my argument is, obviously if you've played through Chimasogos on any level, you will know that Prophet Valen is really annoyed at Archimonde. Like, when you kill the fallen avatar, effectively you've done it. From the storyline point of view, you've done what you set out to do. And Khadgar's even said, right, we can seal it now. We can close off the Burning Legion, because that's what we want to do. Seal off the portal that's letting all these demons through. So we can do that now. Kill Jaden gets away. But Valen's going, no, that's not happening. We're going after Kill Jaden. We're not letting him get away again. We're having him. All right? And then you go to his ship, and then Valen is incensed. He's absolutely furious with him. But then on the fight itself, you can see behind you, there's Illidan fighting some demons, and there's Valen fighting some demons. And then later in the fight, Illidan gets involved, because he gives you his sight for the fog. And then, but Valen does nothing. Even though he's the one who's it's his fault we're on this ship in the first place fighting him. And he's the one who's really mad at Kil'jaeden. So I would have thought that on the Mythic, there's probably a phase with Valen involved. But I don't know that. There might not be any extra phases, but it would be disappointing if there were not. I mean, there doesn't always have to be an extra phase. There isn't always an extra phase. But I think for this fight, it would be disappointing if there were not an extra phase. And it would also be disappointing if Valen were not involved. But I don't know. Well, we will find... I mean, we'll find out soon. Because I say soon enough, I don't know. It depends. Because usually they release the kill video, don't they? Well, there's two ways we might find out. The first might be from the kill shot, the actual screenshot. Maybe we'll see something there that you wouldn't see on Heroic or Normal. But generally speaking, we'd have to wait for the video. But there's like this gentleman's agreement with world first videos that you don't... That the person who killed it first brings it out, but they wait for like 5 kills to kill it or something. The only way to kill Valen... We're not trying to kill Valen. No, Valen's not a demon. He's just like... Draenei. Well, I don't even know. Like, this is where I'm a little hazy on it, the difference to it. Because Draenei is obviously means exiled ones. That's what they became known as after they fled Argus. So when they were on Argus... What were they called? Because there's Eridar, but I think Eridar was specifically the ones from Argus once they were corrupted by the Burning Legion. I don't think Valen is described as Eridar. I think he's just... We just call him Draenei now. But what they were called, I can't remember if they were called anything. Gul'dan knows an orc. Well, he's dead, actually, Gul'dan now. But he was just an orc. He's an orc warlock. That applied equally to our version and the alternate version, which is what we killed in Nighthold. Kil'jaeden and Archimonde accepted the gifts of Sargeras. He turned them into, like, Eridar demons. Who has the demon power? Kil'jaeden. Gul'dan. I don't know what Gul'dan supposedly... I don't think... No, I don't think he's like a demon at all. He's just an orc. I don't remember anything in Warlords of Draenor or Legion that showed him getting anything. I'm not sure what I mean by that, Gloriandus. Yeah, Gul'dan's just an orc. Or he was an orc. He's dead now. What I think about Jaina is I think that the story writers haven't got anything to do with her at the moment. They'll bring her back when they can be bothered to think of a storyline for her. There's so many characters in the game that every now and then some of them just disappear completely. She's not necessarily doing anything apart from sulking. Same with Rathian. At some point he may come... I mean, conceivably you might not see Jaina for 5 more years. You don't have to. But maybe she'll be in the next expansion. They don't know. I don't know. I don't think they forget about her, but I think they're just... There's so many characters, they don't need to actively be using them all at any one time. And as they obviously can't decide... I mean, her storyline in World of Warcraft was never very satisfactory anyway. She had a much better characterization in Warcraft 3 than she ever did in WoW. Because all she did is because she was actually really weird, because on one side of it, you can sort of understand her going very anti-Horde because of the attack on Theramore, as well as, you know, that ruse with stealing the bell from Dalaran or something. I can't remember. There was something in Mop as well, where Garrosh pissed her off. But again, she should have known that that was essentially Garrosh, even though it was all sort of staged to make it look like the Sunreavers or whatever they're called. And everyone else realises that, so why she can't? But the thing is, in Warcraft 3, she basically was involved. Her own father was killed by Thrall. That didn't turn her off Thrall, because as far as she was concerned, her father was the one in the wrong. So she's perfectly capable of seeing things from both sides. So quite why she couldn't see what everyone else saw, which is essentially what the Horde did was on Garrosh's instructions, and once he was gone, the rest of them were actually reasonably honourable. Is just baffling. It made no sense to me. So I hope they don't do anything with her until they've thought of something sensible to do. But, you know, I don't think she's going to feature in Legion. She may or may not feature in the next expansion. She may not feature for a while. All I do hope is they don't do what they did in Legion, which is bring her back for a nanosecond just to have her sulk again. You know, there was... I suppose they, from their point of view, if they were going to use Dalaran, they had to include Jaina at the beginning because she was like in charge of it, just enough to get her to bugger off again. But in the next expansion, presumably they won't have to do anything because we don't know where she is now, which means that we don't have to see her again. Just going to say, actually, I'm going to keep checking as well while I'm on here, because this is one benefit of the two monitors at least. Just checking to make sure that there's no... that Exorcists aren't hot on their heels, because obviously you would expect, or we can't be certain, that they might be the next ones. Obviously the North American guilds will be very quickly, at the moment, I would have thought, re-clearing stuff to get better gear. Oh yeah, I see. I'm not a fan of the sea-based ones. That's what put me off Warcraft 2, actually. Like Warcraft 2, the storyline was alright. It was a lot better than Warcraft 1. But the gameplay, I didn't like it. I didn't like the ships thing. It really put me off. So, I didn't even like Vashir. I sort of accepted it in Cataclysm. Partly because I only played Cataclysm towards the end anyway, so it wasn't that big a deal. And partly because it was one zone, and you didn't absolutely have to do a lot of it. Even though I did. On my main character, I did do all of the main storylines in it. I think I did anyway. But I certainly didn't on my following characters. I just did the bare minimum, got the seahorse, buggered off and went to Hydril instead. But in theory, yeah, if they did want to bring her back, there would be some backstory to what she's been doing in the meantime. I'm absolutely certain of that. But the problem is they've got her trapped in this point now where she's massively anti-Horde, and she is annoyed with any Alliance person that isn't massively anti-Horde. But the problem is, from a PvE point of view, which is what drives the storylines, they can't do a big Horde versus Alliance thing because they have to give us the same PvE content. That's the same dungeons, the same raids. So there has to be a common foe. And when there's a common foe, there's inevitably going to be some teaming up being done. You know, the whole World of Warcraft premise just doesn't work for PvE. So they've got her into a bit of a mess, really. They should have, and they've missed the boat on this, no pun intended. They should have had the situation where a revelation allowed her to realise that it wasn't the Sunreavers that betrayed her, and she went, "Oh, it's all Garrosh. Oh, okay, fair enough. Forgive and forget." Have I seen the Tier 21 Paladin Transmog? Yes, I have. I'm not hugely keen on it, but then to be fair, I'm not hugely keen on a lot of modern transmogs. I don't use any transmog of any Paladin gear later than TBC, really. Even though there's been a couple of sets that have been alright since then, but not great. And certainly not ones that I think are better than the ones I have from Vanilla or TBC. I don't even like the class mount. I'm very disappointed with it. I have now eventually got round to getting it, just for the hell of it, but I don't use it. I rode it around Eastern Plaguelands just once, just to see what it was like. Not keen. It should have been a Pegasus. If it was going to be a flying mount, it should have been a Pegasus mount. Then that would have been much better. Because Tyrael's charges is sort of okay for that, except the wings are rubbish. They've got those stupid Diablo angel wings, which obviously makes sense for the name of it. But I want a proper Paladin Pegasus mount. And this is their opportunity to do it, and they didn't. And I would really like to ask them why. The Ret Pally Q&A, that is a very good question. The plan at the moment, and it's all very, and again, I'm not getting any. So the way it is at the moment, what's supposed to happen is this weekend is going to be the Retribution Paladins on Final Boss TV, which is, you know, which I'm going to be on. But, and even though that's Sunday, and I sort of do mine on Saturday, you could think, well, I could do it at the same time. But Bay always does like a podcast on the Saturday where he goes through notes and stuff like that, which all sounds fairly sensible to me. So that would sort of double book me there. So the plan was going to be, so Final Boss TV this weekend, sorry. And then I was going to do my live rep Q&A the weekend after, which would be when? Hold on. Oh, I hate Windows 10. So I suppose that would have made it the 15th of July. However, I note, and he hasn't said anything to me, but when I say he, Bay, but as I say, I was listening to his latest vlog while I was just doing some work earlier. And I noticed he mentioned, oh, the Retribution Paladin one this weekend, unless, of course, Kil'jaeden goes down, in which case it will be the interview with the people who get the world first. Which I'm assuming means that if that was the case, then his Ret Paladin one would be the weekend after. So I don't really want to now say that my live Ret Q&A will be the weekend after at the moment. So it might be the weekend after that. It might be like, what, the 21st by the time we're going on to this. So it might be several weeks down the line. Because the thing is, in theory, you could say, well, if it was going to be, if Kil'jaeden goes down and they weren't going to do the Ret one this weekend, I could do mine. But by the time we find this out, it might only be a few days. And I like to sort of publicise it for a good week beforehand, ideally. So, long answer there, but I think that's what it is. So, as I say, at the moment, it should be, I've completely forgotten that date again. It should be the 15th, but I can't be certain at the moment, so I'm not going to say anything just yet. It also gives Blizzard more time to say something about us. Because I feel they should say something as well, even if it's to say, we think you're fine, shut up moaning. It's the fact that they're not saying anything at the moment that is a bit disconcerting. At first, I took that silence to mean they're working on it and it's quite imminent. But when it's over a week later, then you begin to think, no. I strongly suspect, and this is what might be delaying it, the only thing I can think of that's delayed, because if all it was needed was a buff to single target damage, which I don't think it's as straightforward as that, but if it were, they could just buff some single target damage abilities. But I think there's more to it than that. I think what they want to do is what they said they were going to do at on the BlizzCon, not BlizzCon, what I'm talking about, Reddit AMA, which is to nerf Crusade and buff other things. But of course you can get that badly wrong both ways. You could make us too strong or you could make us too weak if you got it even slightly wrong. So it is possible that they're not saying anything because that's what they're doing and they want to make sure that they're getting it right. So there we go. But anyway, should we move on to non-Ret based topics, as I say, and then we'll get on to those. We are very good on AoE at the moment. There's no issue on any AoE fights. And Mythic Plus and stuff like that is all fine. Especially with the Legendary Chest. particularly in Mythic Plus, because you get plenty of time when you're running. I say running because we're really slow at it. Between trash packs, you've got plenty of time to charge it up. Any thoughts, theories on what's going to happen with the Pantheon and whatnot after the Argus raid? I don't even know what's going to happen. What's happening with them during the Argus raid? Hi, Pinky. I'm fine, thank you. But yeah, I don't know what's going on. I'm now hesitant at talking too much about this because, you know, people will moan about spoilers. But I'm not giving anything away to say that I don't know what's going on, because it was a bit of a surprise to learn that we're going to be fighting Titans. I'm quite happy for us to go to Argus, because Argus has always been a major area that's been talked about in Warcraft and World of Warcraft, but we've never gone to it. So it's a natural decision. I'm not keen, actually, on Terralian's armour. It sort of mostly looks okay, but the shoulder... I mean, shoulders are always a sore point in World of Warcraft, because they're always ridiculous. But the shoulders are dreadful. I wouldn't want to transmog myself to look like that. If they took those stupid shoulder bits off, maybe. But even then, I prefer this like Lightbringer armor, Judgment armor, even Soulforge armor, the Martial set, which is what I use at the moment. They're all much better. What do I think Blizz will do with the Prophesians? What the hell? Oh, Professions, sorry. Is the Legion update a success? Yes, I think it is. I mean, you've got to remember, the thing of the... the best part of what's good about Professions now was done in WoD. So that was a really good thing that came out of Walls of Draenor. The idea that Professions... First of all, you can make most of the patterns from like level 1. So if you want to change to a new profession, you can do that. And also that you can level up using the current tier's materials. So that used to be the case. So if you wanted to like level up blacksmithing, say, you would have to first of all go and buy a load of vanilla materials to level up to 300, then TBC materials to level up to blah, 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 and keep going like that. That was really annoying. Now you can do it all with the current tier's stuff. Then you've got this thing where you can get the book. So if you change a profession and then change it back, you just buy the book and learn all your old patterns again. I think you learn all of them. Not 100% on that, but I'm pretty sure. It may just include the quest reward. I don't know. But, I mean, at least you're learning some of them back. But also that it's useful. Like, for me, the big problem with Professions in World of Warcraft always was that it's useless. Because while you're leveling, it's useless. Because you're not good enough at the stuff you can make at any one time. Even, like, I used to put a lot of time. It took me ages to get to level 60 originally. 21 game days. It's ingrained on my head. It was taking a lot of people 6 or 7 game days. 21. That's because I spent most of my time in Ironforge trying to sell enchants so that I could then get enough silver together to buy some more cloth and with tailoring make stuff out of that and then disenchant it, make more enchants. But with the crafting stuff, you're never good enough to make stuff that's useful for you while you're leveling. And then when you get to level cap, you quickly do away with it with like dungeon and raid gear. Whereas now, it's different. Like now, you can upgrade crafted gear to item level 900. That's good for a lot of people. If you've got the bloods to be able to do that, and you can afford the obliterum to be able to do it, then that's actually really good for you. And you get to choose your stats. Painting themselves into a corner with armor design. Well, potentially, yeah. I mean, this is why I just don't bother with them. There might be the odd piece, like the rogue hat, the tier 21 rogue hat. I like that. It's like got a Robin Hood thing to it. So I think that's quite good. But generally speaking, that's why I'm not keen on a lot of the armor. I mean, the rogue armor set in general looks all right, actually. But that's why I prefer the vanilla and TBC ones. And now that we've got transmog, it's fine. I hardly pay any attention to the new ones now. Professions having a greater impact on endgame content. Yeah, they have dabbled in that a little bit. TBC was one example. I mean, when I killed Archimon for the first time in TBC, I was using the crafted sword. It was very good. But, yeah, I mean, I would quite like to see that have more of an impact. But as I say, they have dabbled with it. I don't think they've quite got it right. Alchemy, Enchant, and Engineer are certainly useful. In fact, if I would, well, I do, I suppose, technically. But let's say I was creating a character, an alt, specifically for, like, alt raiding, I would make it an Enchanter and an Engineer. An Engineer, so you've always got a Jeeves, in case no one else brings one. And an Enchanter, because you can then disenchant all the stuff you gain. The crafted BC sword note was the Executioner. Lionheart Executioner was the upgrade. You had the Lionheart Blade, then the Lionheart Champion you upgraded to, and then Lionheart Executioner was the ultimate form of it. Yeah, they could do more with the other professions, I agree, to make consumable items. Like, again, they keep trying it, but I just don't think they get it right. They're not very good at their market research with this regard. So with blacksmiths, we do get to make, you know, we get to make the hoof plates, which they're actually not bad. Because, like, it's a bit, I always think it's a bit funny when we've got one of the benefits you can get for one of the Broken Shore buildings. I forget which one it is. I can't remember. But one of them allows you to interact with things while mounted, doesn't it? So you don't get dismounted. Well, blacksmiths can make hoof plates that do that. So we can do that all the time if we wanted to. But I have to admit, even I don't make those hoof plates. So yeah, I think it would be better if blacksmith... I mean, for me, it would have made more sense. You know, you have like the hammer that you can repair at, but it's made by engineers. That would make more sense to me if, like, a blacksmith made a similar, like an anvil type thing that you could quickly repair on. I don't wish they'd bring back specialities for professions, because there was a big downside to that, in that people felt compelled not only to have professions, but worse still, to have specific professions, because some, for a particular class, spec or role, were always better than others. Now, I never felt compelled to change mine from blacksmithing and enchanting, but I always knew, in theory, like, the blacksmithing was good, but probably instead of enchanting, jewel crafting would have been better for me, or something like that. Yeah, I know, method have got, and I know, yeah. So that is a downside. It compels people to get professions when some people just don't want to. And as I say, some profession, the abilities, you either make all the abilities the same, which is then boring, or some inevitably for you personally are going to be better than others. So it's not straightforward, I suppose, as an answer. But in terms of making crafting relevant in terms of gear, I, you know, would quite like it if we had some benefits, such as you've got to put it on a par, haven't you? Like alchemists, in theory, not only can they make their own flasks and stuff, but they get double duration out of them. Maybe they need to do things like that for other professions where it's a similar level of bonus. So blacksmiths can craft things that repair their armor that don't cost as much. So it works out, but I suppose that's quite difficult to do. Or maybe you just say that blacksmiths don't pay repair costs. Maybe they can craft something that only works for them, and it doesn't cost anything to repair the armor, apart from the materials used to make this thing. And maybe this thing only uses like a few fell slate or something. You could have a similar one for leather workers, for leather and mail gear, and for tailors and so on. You just have to think of something for everyone. For scribes, it becomes a bit more difficult, I suppose. Because, I mean, what would you say? That their tomes last twice as long? Well, people don't generally need them to last twice as long. No, I mean, I have to confess, the only reason I got my blacksmithing... There's been no... The one downside I would say to Professions, for all its good points, is there's no reason to get up to max level with it. So with my blacksmithing, I got up to 800 only because I got the pattern to craft the mount, and you needed 800 for it. And I haven't even crafted the mount. I haven't actually even made myself the mount yet, even though I now have the pattern and have learnt it. My enchanting is not up to 800 because there is no need for me to get it to 800. I hardly ever have to enchant anything because you hardly ever get a ring upgrade or neck upgrade, come to think of it, or cloak upgrade. So, and those are the only things you need enchanting for. So, I haven't naturally got myself up to 800. And I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to make enchants just for the hell of it. And I don't bother selling them. So, and there's no need for it. Get more uses out of each tome. I suppose for scribes, maybe you could craft a super tome that has a cooldown but isn't consumed. And is obviously soulbound. So maybe they craft one that's got, I don't know, like a 10-minute cooldown, but it doesn't get consumed. They could do that, perhaps. Obviously, with all the usual restrictions, can't use it in challenge mode, stuff like that. Oh, well, that's the same thing. I mean, I've got an alchemist as well. And absolutely, the only reason I've got 800 on that is from flasks, yeah. I make the flasks and potions for my main character on that. Well, in fact, all my radiant characters. Well, I'm convinced that tomes only became a thing to give scribes something to do, because glyphs now are not a thing. There are cosmetic glyphs, but who cares about those? Very, very small number of people. Which means that, and that was that's why inscription came in. Inscription came in Wrath specifically for glyphs. And although they've added a few other things that they can, in theory, craft, like staves and stuff like that, well, I mean, weapons are pointless in Legion. They were pointless even before Legion, because no one wants a crafted weapon when you can get a much better one from a dungeon. So, as soon as they got rid of glyphs affecting our abilities, you then had no use for scribes. So what did they do? They created, first of all, Vantus runes, fair enough, but that's not going to, just Vantus runes itself is a bit weak. So then they do the tomes. And obviously, so because, yeah, that's the reason I thought tomes came in. Because there's no reason, I don't see any reason why. I can understand in challenge mode not being able to change your talents, fair enough. But generally speaking, why shouldn't you be able to change your talents with a nice cheap consumable like we used to be able to? Like from boss to boss in a raid or something like that. Yeah, I mean, I don't actually use the professions for making gold either. So I just see them purely in terms of their usefulness. Artifact traits. I mean, in the next expansion, obviously we're not going to have artifacts anymore. But I do think Blizzard like the system. I think they'll consider it a success. So we'll have something equivalent next expansion. Quite in what format that will be, I don't know. Because what the artifact traits look like very much is like an old style talent tree. Whether that means a return to the old style talent tree, I doubt it. Because that would be a major redesign. But I suppose we'll just have to wait and find out. Quite when we'll find out, I don't know, because it looks like the Argus patch, sorry, is or the Argus content, should we say, is going to last a lot longer than was first thought. I expected it to be, you know, Argus out in a few months after that the Argus raid, and then by sort of, I don't know, next Easterish, that it's all sort of done and dusted, and then you've got a bit of a lead up for a few months to the next expansion, and that the next expansion would be autumn 2018. I don't think that's going to be the case now, because they're making a big thing of Argus. Apart from anything else, what surprised me is that there are 3 zones And that's just what we know about. That doesn't include these invasions that are supposed to occur on other worlds as well. So the scope of the Argus content could be huge. And obviously they're only going to give us bits of information every now and then. So we're not going to find out the full impact of it straight away. In terms of getting rid of our artifacts, though, we are sort of, yeah, we are doing that. I mean, they have confirmed that. And it'll be like the first quest in the next expansion rather than at the end of this expansion, because we'll still need them at the end of this expansion. Well, this is the problem, the Action Man, in that the issue is when you announce something that sounds brilliant and everyone's getting hyped about, is that there is the potential to overhype it, to assume there's going to be things in there that are not then in there, and then people get disappointed, because sometimes you can be disappointed with something that's actually really good just because it's not as good as you expected. So we'll have to manage expectations, I think. At the same time, it could well end up being Blizzard's flagship for Legion, because they've been very careful about not telling us very much about it. So they've obviously got big surprises in store. How do I feel Paladins are now? I don't know for PvP. As they're generally regarded as being quite good for PvP, I gather. And dungeons were fine for. So for those two bits of content, probably fine. All I know of Prots, I don't play it a lot, is that your health can go very low. You have to sort of manage that. So ironically, you can be a little squishy compared to some tanks. So you have to be careful to manage that. More allude to what the Broken Shore Legion Fall campaign was. Yeah, well, the Broken Shore thing was the actual Broken Shore content. It was just World Quest. That's all it was. But the rest of it, it was just the raid. We were just waiting for the raid. Obviously, this actual campaign was a load of rubbish after a while, because as they said themselves, they put all the good stuff in right at the start because they'd intended to space it out. If they'd have spaced it out a bit more, it might have been okay, but they didn't, because they were conscious of the fact that people were expecting a lot of 7.2. Strange, I know, with a content patch being announced. And they felt they had to put all the Premier stuff right at the start, apart from the class mount, which was always intended to be at the end of the campaign. So, yeah, so the Broken Shore ended up being, on balance, disappointing. So your guild is stuck on Avatar Heroic, the bottom of DPS. Well, legendaries, I mean, you can overplay legendaries. They're not as powerful as some people think, but they are powerful. There's no getting away from that. And if you don't have two of the very good legendaries, you're potentially in a bit of trouble. But, so are you a Retribution Paladin? I'm assuming you are by what you're saying. Avatar is obviously really difficult, because some people will whore on it, and if your raid leaders are not able to tell where the effective damage is going, that can be a problem. In terms of, I mean, obviously what you need to do when you're not able, because the other problem is, if you've got, especially if you've got like relics, you can't use your full crusade. It's a terrible fight for Retribution Paladins. It's a dreadful fight. Absolutely dreadful. Doesn't matter what mode it's on. Because you go in, pop all your cooldowns, and then before your cooldowns can even finish, you're having to move out again. And there's so many things you have to move out for. It's less melee friendly in general. Obviously, we note that when Method killed it, they did so with a load of rogues and a couple of arms warriors. So they've obviously worked out a way to include melee in it. But it is melee unfriendly. But it is definitely... Retribution Paladins are weak on that fight. Unfortunately, it is where we are with that. Now, with it being heroic, the only reason you should have to sit is if you're doing really bad DPS, because it's not like you're going to be replaced. I'm assuming there's not 30 people in this raid, because that would be strange. You generally don't have, even though heroic can accommodate 30, it's not common to have 30 in, is it? But all you can do is just make sure that you go through your sequence correctly. And it depends where your gear is. It depends on what your artifact level's at as well. It's not just about item level. So if you've got 15, 17 people, if you're asked to sit on heroic, that's pretty embarrassing, because that means that you're not even doing your share of the damage. You will always do low damage. I do low damage on it. What do I get? Hold on. I'm just checking on what you want me to see it here. Let me try and find Warcraft logs. My damage is appalling on it because, one, I don't whore. I never do that. But even then, it's really bad. Oh God! I can't spell www. That's not helping. But this is a curse. This second monitor, it's making me do things. So I got, let's go on to heroic, fallen avatar. Yes, I mean I was very low down on it. I strongly suspect the only people lower than me DPS wise are the ones who were dead. You won't be able to post anything here now. Links don't work on here now, because otherwise people will just spam all sorts of junk. So you have to sort of make sure links aren't visible. But it is there's no getting away from it. It's a really bad fight for Retribution Paladins in general. The only way to get high passers, if you're worried about your spot and you just want to make it look like you're doing more damage, then make sure you are, and no one, it depends obviously, like I'm just making assumptions about your raid leader, I don't know. If no one will notice, I suppose the way you could look at it is, look at how much damage people are doing to the maiden on it. Because in theory you should only attack the maiden when you need to break the shield. But there will be, and I guarantee, if I were to look at that link of that log, which I can't, there will be people attacking the maiden outside of those times. Maiden of Valor, that's what it's called. And you could easily do the same thing, because you could just throw Divine Storms through it so that they hit the boss as well. Not that I'm advocating that, because that's bad. You could potentially be killing the maiden at the wrong time and therefore increase the chance of wiping on the boss. You're not supposed to hit her unless either it's about to phase or that you need to break the shield. But it is a way of padding your damage numbers so they don't look as bad, because it's very difficult without padding to make your damage numbers look good. Well, the question then would be, are they getting away with it? But if that's not an option to you, if you sort of feel someone is checking that and that's not an option, it's unfortunately just a case of making sure that your rotation is good. Like, how are you? All right, let's say, what was your damage like on Sisters of the Moon, for example, compared with the rest of your raid group? Because that's another single target fight. Just looking at mine. mean, the other single target fight is Maiden of Vigilance. Unfortunately, that's a really bad one to look at because you're at the mercy for your DPS of everyone else. Because what's supposed to happen on Maiden of Vigilance is you go out to this for the orb soaking bit. You're supposed to all stack. People are supposed to get orbs, and you're supposed to get stacked up to 10. Whereas very frequently, I end up on a side where we end up with like 4 stacks. So then obviously you can't do damage then. You're snookered. Yeah, but what is it compared to everyone else? Like, where are you on the damage meters compared to everyone else? Like, a number doesn't necessarily tell me how you are compared with everyone else. Like, what position? Out of, say, these 15 to 17 people. Because the number will be very dependent on the kill time. Because if you kill it just as your Crusader's finished, then you'll have higher numbers. Eight out of 12. Yeah, but 8 out of 12 is still low down, isn't it? What's your artifact level? What's the level of your artifact weapon? Your Ashbringer. $57. Well, that's no problem. All I would say then is either your item level. I know you've said about legendaries, and that is an issue. But either your item level is way below everyone else's, or you just need to hit the training dummy and practice rotations a bit. And also remember with the ret, it's really crucial that you are not away from DPS. Every second that you're not DPSing, you're losing actually a lot of damage. A lot. Also, it could be tier based. It might be that other people in your guild have got like tier bonuses and you don't. I don't know. There's so many things that are factors. But you shouldn't. I don't see why in a heroic raiding guild there should ever be a position where you should have to be sat, unless you're doing a mechanic so wrong that you're wiping everyone time after time after time. Because as I say, it's flex mode. So that seems vaguely silly to me. But obviously the way to, if you are in competition for your place or whatever, you do need to bung it up. You need to somehow improve. And that's going to come with practice. And you can practice, you obviously don't pay attention to numbers on the train dummy, but you can practice your rotation. Yes, certainly, like Glandia says, if you've got a UI that helps you out. Like the default UI is, I don't even know how I've never completely used it, I suppose. It was UI add-ons, or at least raid frame add-ons, even in vanilla. But anyway. You could always send them in to my YouTube. Just message me on YouTube and I might be able to do a video on them. I haven't done any vlogs, videos for a bit. I mean, this weekend, for example, depending on the I keep saying fat boss, final boss, is that whether that goes ahead or not. If it does go ahead, then I'm going to be obviously setting up largely for that, which means... but if it doesn't go ahead, then I'd suppose I would have time to look at that. Well, there is that, Murthus, but I mean, it'd have to be really low for that. I mean, it'd have to be stunningly low before you start setting people on that. 920 equipped. Right, when you say you've got... So, okay, you said that they're the only ones out of the top 5 you've got. How... It may not be worthwhile. This is where you'd have to sim yourself, like use raid bots or something. It may not be worth giving up a tier piece for the shoulders. Like, there are other legendaries that are good that without the throughput. Pride As is good because of the stats on it. Ceph as a secret is good on a fight where you can interrupt a bit. Obviously, if you can't, then you can't. And TOS is not good for that. The boots are not bad if you've got good haste, especially on Avatar, because it allows you to move more quickly. But also the braces, the cheat death braces, they're not bad if you're in the habit of potentially dying. Also, if you're in the habit of taking divine intervention because of the cheat death on it, you could use the braces for the cheat death, and instead of taking divine intervention, you could take Cavalier. That allows you to move. Again, you get 2 charges on your movement speed. That will help on Avatar as well. Yeah, Pride As and Braces are not a bad combination. The Pride As stats are really good. And the Braces, as I say, are pretty good for the cheat death mechanic on it. As I say, it may well mean that it means you don't have to use divine intervention. Well, you can use both. Like, I'm not sure... If you were to sim yourself with that set bonus and Pride As and the braces, and then sim yourself without the set bonus but with the shoulders, I'm not sure that it would tell you to wear the shoulders. It might. I don't know what the rest of your gear looks like, but it may not. Obviously, another factor in this is going to be how many of your legendaries are upgraded as well. In terms of, if you're wearing a legendary for stats, obviously, you're going to get a lot more out of it. It's 970 compared to 940. Yeah. Okay. I had to get Pride As up to 970, actually, for Mythic Sisters of the Moon. Pride As is considered a fairly commonly used legendary for that. Because there's a lot of constant damage goes out. So, yeah, every little helps on that one. Most of our raid were using that, as well as the Vantus runes we were using, which we'll probably use again this week because there isn't any other boss to use it on, really. But look up raid bots, start putting some stuff in there, start simming yourself. At least make sure that you're using the gear that'll give you the best chance. So swap things around and see what seems to work best. And set it on, if you're going to do it for Avatar, not set it on patchwork, set it on heavy movement fight. And for something like Sisters, I'd tend to set it on light movement. But there is no getting away from the fact Rets are not good on Avatar. So, but we'll leave that one there because I say that's. But if I get time, if you send me on YouTube, you send me some logs and stuff, I can always have a look at the logs part of it. That won't help me work out what gear is best for you. Yeah, do sim it. I run regular sims. I was simming myself with loads of different combinations of stuff yesterday, for example, to see what to use on Sisters. You just have to use the right type of fight. Patchwork is very rarely the right type of fight. A lot of it's either light movement or beast lord or heavy movement. Oh, do you know what? I've forgotten something on here, haven't I? So stupid. Never mind. I'll just remember. You've just reminded me of something, but it doesn't matter. It's fine. I need to set these things up now. The streaming things. I need to actually start saving my presentation. I made this one from scratch today again, because I had to make another one for. Because it's really, as I say, with the 2 monitors, because I have to use Broadcaster now for streaming the gaming. Ironically, to set up something that I've forgotten to set up today, which is to show when people subscribe and follow and stuff like that. So I've just noticed that there have not been any popping up, and it's because I haven't got them on here. But then I still don't know. I still don't really know how to use Twitch properly. I am going to have to sit down and go through it properly, because Twitch are not actually very helpful at instructing you. I mean, like, I was looking today, for example, on my Twitch thing, because I thought, okay, and I can find out, say, how many subscribers I've got. It says, oh, you've got 2 subscribers. Okay, great. Who are they? I don't see where I would find that out. I know one because they've said so, but I don't otherwise know that. So it's all very, very weird, but as I say, I will work it out over summer. Right. Anyway, I'm still checking. I'm keep making my Twitter set up in case someone else sneaks. No one else will sneak. 8 out of 9. I wonder when Kill Jaden is going to... I can't... It's not going to last till the weekend, is it, surely? Because tomorrow, Method restart again. So they'll get 8 bosses worth of more mythic gear. And when you look at the item level a lot of them have got, that's going to be a big boost. It'd be easy to think their item level must be absolutely immense. But actually, a lot of it's not. It's no more... I don't think their item level of the people that were in that raid that killed Avatar were any... I don't think it was any better than our guild, really. And our guild, we've no chance of making those DPS checks. Yeah, I know they're 8 out of 9, yeah. I was just wondering if anyone else had caught up to that. But what I mean is, tomorrow it resets in the EU, so Method will kill those same 8 bosses tomorrow, you would think. Or I would think, anyway. And get the loot from that. And then... I suppose they would do some other farm, I don't know. They'd probably, I suppose they'd still do splits for heroic a bit to get a bit more gear, and then. But it would be, I think it would be remarkable if Kill Jaden lasted the weekend. No, like Avatar Mythic was nerfed a couple of times, hot fixed, no announcement or anything. They don't always announce these things. It's still tightly tuned. By virtue of, I mean, you can tell that by the fact that one guild has killed it. And it may well be that they had a lucky pull. Because sometimes that's... With these tight DPS checks... See you later. With these tight DPS checks, it might well be that you just have to keep plugging at it and hope for the lucky pull. Where everything goes your way. Yes, it will be the real mythic testing, because if there is an extra phase on Kill Jaden, they will not have seen it at all. I mean, the PTR is not like a perfect representation of what's going to come out on live, but it is pretty good. I mean, I miss doing PTR testing. I did PTR testing for the WOD raids, and it was a definite benefit. And I haven't done it at all for any Legion raids. And you do miss that, because... The problem is you can read guides from people who have done the PTR, but you're learning all these abilities for like 9 new bosses, and they just start to run in your head and mix up. So like I was thinking about certain bosses, for example, when it came out, and mixing it up with abilities from other bosses, because I just learnt the abilities, sort of. But because I not experienced them, I wasn't really all that aware of which ones came from which. Oops. Yeah, obviously it's just extremely tightly tuned. It may have been impossible. It may have been impossible like a week ago when they all started on it. Or not all started. Obviously Method couldn't start on it until Wednesday. Kill Jaden. Yeah, but we don't know what's going to happen on Kill Jaden. Like, I suppose you can try and data mine the damage of Kill Jaden on Mythic, and then you can work out how long you've got till Enrage, and try and work out some sort of calculation. But it doesn't tell you, for example, if during the fight you'll get a damage buff, right, from like Velen or something like that. It doesn't tell you if there are any other mechanics as well that'll change it. So you don't really know. You can't just do they've got this much health, this much time, so divide one by the other, divided by the number of DPS you've got, because you don't know what all the mechanics of the fight are yet, because they don't always announce them for the last boss. Mythic Avatar is already dead. Yes, it died before the stream started. So it's been dead about 2 hours now. And that is even though it's the new reset for North America, it was a European guild that did it. So it's still the first Mythic reset for them. Right at the death. But as I say, they have spent some time, when it became clear it was too tightly tuned for them, they did then turn their attentions, I gather, to just spamming a load of Mythic Plus dungeons. Because obviously, you know, you're getting 915 item level base, but if you spam them enough, then you can be potentially getting some Titan Forge gear. And a few pieces of that can make the difference. Speaking of which, I hope my cash gives me something useful next week. I mean, the first one, you think to yourself, getting a 930 item level item is guaranteed upgrade. It doesn't matter what slot it is, as long as it's not a tier slot, I'll be able to equip it. And then I got a 930 neck, and you think, oh, okay. And then awful stats to the point where it's actually not as good as the one I'm wearing, which is way lower item level. 910. I'm sure I got a 915. I'm not going to check just now. But I'm sure I got a 915. Well, I'm pretty sure I was. Did I? But anyway, it's definitely a 930 from the Mythic cache. Well, I mean, generally speaking, the caches... Oh, is it 910? Okay. I thought I got a 915. Maybe it was Warforged, and I didn't notice. One thing... Yeah, like, after a while, then the chances of it being an upgrade are much lower, because once the item level of it... Because what was it? What was the item level before this? Was it... Was it 900 or 905 from the weekly cache before Tomb of Sargeras came out? I can't remember now. It was only a few weeks ago and I've completely forgotten. But when that was round about the same item level, 905, thank you. So when your item level is your overall item level is higher than that, then obviously there's a much lower chance that it's going to be an upgrade. But when, at the moment, my item level is 922-ish. It depends what trinkets and legendaries I'm using, but about 922. Obviously, a 930, you would think, has a pretty good chance of being an upgrade for you. I mean, sure, if it blocks off a tier piece you need to use, then no. But generally speaking, it should be an upgrade. But it wasn't last week, and it may not be next week. As in tomorrow. I mean, I've not run that many Mythic Pluses. I was saying yesterday, actually, like I'm running the plus 15 under Sufferance just to, you know, for the sake of getting the weekly cash to get the 930 item. But I don't. It's not that I've got anything against Mythic Plus. It's because the thing is, I don't do them enough to really properly know they're done. I used to, obviously, when we were pushing like to get our original cap on the artifact weapon, the original. I forgot what it was called now. It's Concordance now. It was called something different. Then I was doing a lot of Mythic Plus dungeons, and you got to know them, and they became a much more casual affair. Whereas now, because I only do a few a week, in fact, I still need to do a fourth. I've only done 3, so I still need to do a fourth for the heroic cache. I need to do that after this stream. Then I don't get to know them, so I like feel bad in them because I don't really know the dungeons now, like in terms of with the different affixes, so I don't always know what I'm doing, and because of that, that doesn't really make you want to do more because you just feel you're potentially letting people down. So you just do the bare. So I just do the bare minimum now. Nightmare eggshell, dear me. No, nightmare eggshell is terrible. Cinders, yeah. Cradle. You have to be careful of cradle sims because obviously on any fight where you're, like say, Sisters of the Moon, it would not be all that useful because sims will assume you stay at 100% health. So if you get knocked down below 50% health, say, and it won't start restacking until it gets above 80%, I think it is. Then I don't really know about the handkerchief, how that sims. I haven't looked at that for a while. I haven't got a good one myself, so I've not really needed to. But I mean, at some point, I will have to update the information on trinkets. I kept waiting for Blizzard to nerf one of the trinkets before I talked about them in any great detail, but they haven't done that. They always nerf trinkets, but they haven't done it yet. So I'm starting to think now maybe I should do one on trinkets again. I mean, I talked about like from the PTR how they work, but not which ones were best. But maybe I should do that again now. What's uptime with the cradle? I mean, for a lot of fights it should be fine because there's no reason for your health to drop below 50% on a fair number of fights, but there are some where it's going to. I mean, I tried Engine of Eradication on PTR, did not like it because you have to move out of melee range. Not miles out of melee range, but you are having to move out of melee range. Just not keen on as a paladin. Right, I don't know. As I say, handkerchief is not one of those I've tended to be in the habit of simming because I can't. You know, it's one of those where it doesn't look brilliant. But I mean, Vial is nice and straightforward to use, and obviously Cinders will just do its thing passively. So, and at the moment, as I say, I have a strength haste static, so that all works fine. Oh my god. So I just keep checking Twitter, see if there's any little announcements. But not yet. I suppose if, because Exorcist I don't think would be miles behind. So if Exorcist don't get it, let's say by tomorrow, then it might be an indicator that it was just a really lucky pull. How's progress going in our guild? We got 3 out of 10, but then we got 3 out of 10 in like half a raid. So since then, we should have had this boss down. This was our last pull last night on Sisters, when it was a kill, until stupidity happened. Like we were there. We got it down to like 11%, 10%, something like that, with enough people alive. And then brain farts happened, and we wiped. So we should have been able to say we're on 4 out of 10, 4 out of 9, sorry, but we can't. So we'll have to wait for Thursday. We'll have to hope that people put the brains in on Thursday, that we all focus up, and that we also get, well, what we've got to do is tomorrow start on the split runs again. Yeah, I imagine a lot of guilds found the same thing. But we need to do the split runs again on Wednesday. And then, and that will take us all Wednesday. So then Thursday it needs to be polish off the first 3 bosses really quickly, because we should one-shot all. As I say, we'll have to move people in that missed them the first time round, but we need to one-shot those really, 1 or 2 shot anyway. Then get onto Sisters, not mess about on Sisters, kill it in an hour, have the break, and then 2 hours on Desolate Host, kill that. And then if we might be by the weekend on 5 out of 9. That is the optimistic view, but it is also realistic, so that would be quite good. And then if we did get up to 5 out of 9 by the weekend, I don't think we'd get any higher this next reset. I can't see us killing Mistress. We're not killing Mistress this week. But at least we can get some good progress on it if we can get to 5 out of 9 by the weekend. We've never had a clean transition into P3. Your priest gripped someone. Why would your priest ever grip anyone on this fight? Like, whether it's panicked or not, why would they ever think gripping anyone on this fight would be a good thing to do? They should unbind it for this fight. If I was a raid leader in that group, if something like that happens once, if it's an ability that you don't ever use, I would just immediately say unbind it. But we've never had a clean transition into P3. Even on this, where is it? I mean, this is the kill. You can see here at this point, everyone's alive. Is that in P3? I suppose that is technically in P3. Oh, maybe we did have a cleaner transition into P3 on that pull than I gave everyone credit for. But it didn't last long, mind you. No, this isn't P3. What am I talking about, fool? It's P1. I'm going to say. I'm sure there were people dead by P3. There's someone dead there. The first wave in P2 is always the worst, don't you find? Because you forget about it. I also had one embarrassing moment yesterday when I was sort of jammed up against there, P2, and I was looking at the panther thing, or the tiger, whatever it is, moonsaber, what, I don't know, waiting for the glaive to come from it. Didn't see the glaive come, and I suddenly saw 2 glaives come behind me and cut me in 2. So I obviously missed the glaive coming towards me because of the weird angle I was at. But yeah, we've got everyone alive at this point. There's no battle reses, so people have died and been resed up. But it was all going really well. But it is a very long piece. I mean, the whole fight's really long. Massively long fight. For a 4th boss, I can't remember the last time there was a 4th boss that lasted 10 minutes. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you're up against the wall, I can imagine it's really bad. Like I do on the splits with my BM Hunter, but that's just heroic. But yeah, up against a wall, you've got limited options with your camera. So yeah, I've completely missed it now. So we've obviously had a few more die here, but it was still enough. It was still enough. It was still annoying that they died. I mean, so, to a certain extent, some of it can't be helped. So there's some abilities where you, like people, I've forgotten what they're called, people chucking those things out, you're bound to get the odd person, like see, I was taking some damage there. You're bound to get the odd person die. Avatar Heroic is... it's a good question. Avatar Heroic, is that tougher than Mythic Goroth? It's a harder boss mechanically than even Mythic Goroth, because you've the thing with, I'm just going to pause that a minute. The thing with Mythic, I mean, this is the point where we're all dead anyway. Heroic Avatar is, you might have to, if you transition at the wrong time and you haven't got the maiden down, then he absorbs all of her health. You can suddenly find the boss has gone from like 20% to 50% health again. So you've got to re-kill 30% of his health. So it's mechanically harder. Whether the DPS check is as bad, I don't know. But I would say Heroic Avatar is more difficult than Mythic Goroth. Because Mythic Goroth only has one ability. Like, all the heroic abilities are dead simple. and it only has one extra mythic ability that well, maybe there's another one for the tanks, I don't know, I don't care. But it's only got one extra one for everyone else. And that, there's a bit of RNG to it with those circles you have to soak. There is a bit of RNG to it. But by and large, it's straightforward. The only other thing I don't like about the Mythic Goroth, as I say, is the fact that you get spikes just seemingly disappear for no reason. Because that's what killed me on it. Like... Right, so there's infernal burning coming here, I can see in a few seconds. Let's see if it does it on this one. I know it did it on a couple of them. So it was okay on that one. Oh, too far. That's definitely too far. I'm dead at that point. Right, I must dive somewhere soon here. Alright, so I destroyed that spike, I think. Right, here we go. So, I pointed this out earlier. So, I'm behind a spike. Everything should be fine and dandy. Then the spike suddenly goes. But the burning is coming in like 0.8 seconds. So, at this point, I'm screwed. My bubble's already on cooldown because I've obviously blotted my copybook earlier on. Well, it may well be, yeah. But that's something, again, you don't end up having on Heroic. So, and because we killed this we didn't have loads and loads of pulls on it, then that basically meant that things like that will potentially happen because you haven't really fully grasped everything. Yeah. Well, no, it's not automatically Zeal for single target. It's Zeal if you have the 4 set tier 20 bonus and you're using Blade of Wrath. You can't use Zeal with, say, Divine Hammer because you'll have loads of downtime. But if you don't have the 4-piece tier 20, then you'd have to sim it, but you may not fight. It's not automatically the case that you'd use Zeal. So, oh, sorry, I've now read the rest of your sentence. Yeah, you need tier 20 to make Zeal good. And ideally, plenty of haste as well. So you have to keep simming yourself, really. But yeah, so Goroth, I would say, is not as difficult a fight. But in terms of the DPS, it might, I don't know. But you do sometimes get that. The hardest bosses on Heroic can sometimes be as difficult or more so than the... There was a situation, for example, I mean, Hellfire Citadel in WoD was a classic case of where Heroic Archimond was much more difficult than, say, Mythic Hellfire Assault. Or even the next boss, I forgot what it's called now. That Fell Reaver type thing. In fact, it may have been called the Iron Reaver now that I think about it. I can't remember. Well, yeah. I mean, I suppose Kilrog was fairly straightforward as well, yeah. But the biggest thing with Heroic Avatar is, as I say, making sure you transition without him eating a load of the Maiden's health. You need to make sure the Maiden gets down to... Like, there's two things that can transition the Fallen Avatar. One is he gets his bar filled up. I've forgotten what it's called, the bar energy or something, whatever it is. As soon as that fills up, it goes down. Or when you get him down to something like, whatever it is, 20% or something. But you're only going to do that if you've got loads of damage. So realistically, it's when his bar fills up. So when his bar is close to being filled up, you need to make sure that the Maiden's going to die. Because if she doesn't, then he's going to consume all that health. And I'd say we've had that, where we've got the boss's health low, and then goes down and all of a sudden he's up to 50-55%, because we didn't manage the Maiden properly. We didn't know about any fiddliness with tank sacrifice, I have to say, when we did it. We did kill Heroic Archimond in the first week. I don't think we split that. We did do split runs. I'm not sure we split Heroic Archimond though. I think we may have done that as mains. Can't remember. I'd have to check now. It is possible we still did it with split runs, but I forget. But it was definitely quite difficult. The Heroic Archimond was definitely a tough one. Much tougher than, say, Heroic Kil'jaeden has been. No, well, in the guild I'm in now, we sort of... it was just a quirk of fate that we've done splits. I'm glad we have, because I'm a big supporter of them. I was going to say fan. I'm not a fan of having to do them. But they are here to stay because, like, not that anyone particularly likes them. It's really weird. Like, no one likes doing them. Blizzard don't want us to do them. But like Blizzard themselves said, any solution you saw... People all the time come up with solutions to prevent it. But whatever solution either wouldn't prevent it or just creates a much bigger problem. You can't think in terms of a given haste percentage. Like, if you want, aim for 31-ish. But if you can't just... Like, if you've got a piece of gear and you wanting to get... The problem with thinking of a particular percentage for a haste is you're looking at two pieces of gear and you go, that's got haste in it, that hasn't, so I'll wear this because it's going to give me some haste, whereas the other one might be better. Yeah, split's a problem with that. But it was a total quirk of fate because what happened was we don't insist on alts and we don't like do splits. Obviously, if we don't insist on alts, we can't do splits. But it's all to do with Infernal Cinders. And one of our warriors said, wouldn't it be great if we could get a load of Infernal Cinders on melee? We should do split runs at least on Goroth. So it started off us thinking, okay, well, we could easily, because that's the first boss, that should be no problem splitting that. And then we start to look at, okay, who would be up for this? Because even if you're just going to split the first boss, you need enough people to make it worthwhile. Because with our full raid group and a few socials, we could have got a 30-man heroic and normal raid together. So if we do it with split runs, that means we need enough alts to make... There's no point in going with two groups of 15. You might as well just go with your group of 30. So we needed enough. And then it turns out that even though we don't insist on alts, enough people had alts that were good enough. There's a few that don't have alts, but most do. So and then we thought, well, we could do beyond Goroth. We could do other bosses as well. So it just sort of came from a few weeks before Tomb of Sargeras. We're not doing split runs at all because that's not what we do in our guild. To, we're doing split runs. Even though in the first week, like on normal, we're able to split by all the bosses, no problem. Heroic, we were able to split the first 6 in the first week. And then, because we didn't want to spend too much time. And then the second week, we were able to split 7. So maybe tomorrow, we'll be able to split 8. So yeah, so with I thought the shoulders wouldn't be that good compared to the set bonuses. I mean, the shoulders are all right, but the problem is they occupy a tier slot and they're not brilliant, so it's not really worth. Best parts for tier 20. No, obviously I can't see the link. In general, you'd ideally want the one... I can't remember them all now. I can't be looking stuff up either. Or can I? Hold on. Oh my god, is that actually your name? Jesus. Let me try. Alright then. This is an unnecessary name. There's a... Right, okay, I've got you. There's an unnecessary level of repetition in that name. Generally speaking, I can't remember what stats all of the pieces have on it. I can remember which ones I want. You want ones with haste. I'm pretty sure the tier 20 legs have haste. So you sort of want the legs. I'm not sure too many of the other pieces, if indeed any of them, have haste. That's the problem. Or the breastplate does, actually. But that's also got mass. But that's, yeah. So, but I think the 4 pieces that I ideally want are the legs, the chest, and the shoulders, which I have. But also the gloves, which I don't. I have the helm instead. The Biss helm is, I think, the one that drops off trash. It's a BOE drop. And the cloak, like sometimes we'll use the legendary cloak. Although ironically, with tier 20, 4-piece, a lot of people are finding that the legendary belt plus Liadrin's Fury Unleashed is simming better. The downside to that is simming better. You have to be careful of that because both of those legendaries only work during Crusade, which means that if you absolutely have to get the best out of Crusade. If you can't, then that's devaluing it. So it's not going to do as much as the sim is saying it is. So you have to be really careful with that. Like on Avatar, for example, you ain't using your full duration of Crusade during Avatar. No way in hell. So that devalues those legendaries. In fact, it could be argued you shouldn't use either of them. But the belt is usually strong enough that it's worth it. But those are generally the 4 best ones. I'm just trying to see. So, hold on. You've obviously got a really good helm, so obviously you don't want. In fact, is that the Biss helm? No, it's not, is it? No, I think there's a better one for BOE, but it's 940 anyway. So obviously you don't want the tier helm. I'm just trying to see what else you've got that's decent. So you've already got the breastplate, you've already got the legs, which are good. So you probably want the gloves, and because you're using the legendary cloak, you want the shoulders. So that should be fairly straightforward. Which are generally speaking the ones you'd ideally want anyway. Chest, shoulders, legs and gloves. But anyway, so we talked rather more about Rhett than we're supposed to, really. But other people didn't ask too many questions. We'll come to sort of the 2-hour mark, so I do the usual thing of if anyone wants to throw any extra ones in, then we could keep going for a little bit. Otherwise, we'll start to wind it down a bit. I need to go off and make sure I get another, even if it's just a mythic plus naught, so that I can get my 4 done and open my heroic cache, which no doubt will be another chaos crystal, just like it was from the mission. Actually, I say it was a chaos crystal. That was unfair. I could actually use it, but for an off spec, I got a holy relic, but not unfortunately one that's an upgrade for my Ashbringer. But yeah, in terms of stuff that's coming up, the Warcraft logs next in the series, which is on the replay function, that will be going live on YouTube on Thursday. The next part of the heroic guides, the one that's supposed to be for the middle 3 bosses, let's think which ones they are. That's Mistress, Sisters, and Desolate Host. I don't know. It would definitely be out on Friday, because if it's not done before Friday, it will get done on Friday. But at the moment, it's just everything's just rammed with time at the moment. Every other stuff keeps going, because obviously at the moment the key priority is like the progress raid with the guild, and work is being is really tough at the moment as well. I'm having lots of extra work to do, and then obviously this weekend, at the moment, still no one's told me otherwise, so it's still likely to be final boss. But I suppose that all depends on Method, because he'll probably want to interview Method as soon as they kill it, and that may well take precedence at the weekend. If Kill Jaden falls before the weekend, and I'll be honest, I can't see it not doing. It might not do, but they are surely going to do their farm stuff on Wednesday. Well, no, I mean, they're bound to. They've said they don't do a lot of nerfing and buffing, or at least nerfing. They've said they don't intend to do nerfing during a tier, and now that we're now properly established within this next raid tier, supposedly that means, but they've said things like that before and lied. I say lie, that's a strong word. Not being right, should we say. Done the opposite of what they said they were going to do. Which is not always a lie. It comes sometimes just, you know. But I think there will be, I don't know about a buff, I think they're going to try and tune Crusade. I think if they were just going to try and tune something else to tune our single target damage up, they'd have already done it, because that would have been really simple. I think they see Crusade as being the problem, and they want to do something about that. But it's a very complex problem to solve, that one. It's not straightforward. They have tried many times before. They tried even before Legion launched in the alpha and the beta, and it went badly wrong. But I think that's what they're going to try and do. So what I'm going to say is, unless they come up with a solution for it, I wouldn't expect anything quite soon. Which means we're probably not going to be looking good on Avatar for a while. If indeed we ever are, and you could always argue that even if we were better balanced, just the Avatar fight is not well suited to a melee class with limited movement options. Like, I mean, a warrior that can leap out and charge back in is in much better shape. The same with Demon Hunter can do something similar. Feral Druids can do something similar. Windwalker Monks have got their roll and Flying Serpent Kick. You know, things like Death Knights and Ret Paladins are much more limited in regards to that. So you're always going to be, just because of the nature of the fight, not good. And because we don't have Execute, it's not even like you can drag us through phase 1 and use us on phase 2. Then melee is, but yeah, if you look at the method, well, method had like 5 rogues. They had 5 rogues and 2 arms warriors. You'd think the arms warriors are there for the execute phase. Obviously, they do strong damage in general, but they're super strong for cleave, which is not really required in this fight, but also execute. So they were taken for the execute, I'm sure, and the rogues were taken for just doing silly amounts of damage and being basically immune to everything. I suppose they took the rogues because you have the option of then being able to solo soak some of the thingies of Sargeras, whatever they call the circly things. I don't know. We'll find out when they release the kill video, I suppose. But there's no point in really reading too much into. Yes, I do. There's no point in reading too much into what method used, because obviously for us mere mortals, by the time we get to it, our gear will be at such a point where we will be able to take. We won't. I mean, it's just as well. We ain't got 5 rogues. We haven't even got 2 that can be relied upon all the time. How did you do that? Oh, you've come right at the end of a live stream, though, unfortunately. Hiya, Ace Fat Boy. We're right at the end, unfortunately, though. How have you done that? That shouldn't be allowed. This is the thing. See, Twitch has got some very dodgy systems. If it's just putting the question mark on the end of it that seems to have got it through, then that's appalling. Someone was catching me out last week as well by just putting stupid characters on the end of it. It should understand that entire sequence of letters should be banned, not just that. I don't know. What's the point in even being able to ban a word if you can't actually? If it, it's quite good in some ways, Twitch, but in other ways, it's just a disaster. Yeah, I mean, there's ended up being quite a lot of retribution talk, more than I intended to actually. Although people weren't asking a lot of general questions, although we have sort of discussed a few other things as well. But yeah, I will be obviously putting up the video. Usually I have to sort of put it up overnight. Horde is best. How is Horde best? They are boring and ugly. No, well, in 2 ways. Their races are ugly and their buildings are boring. So you know, because I had to go Horde for a year. Trolls are not good. It was, you know, I went into the Horde. I obviously knew what the Horde garrison looked like before, because I had tried it on the WoD beta as well. But the it's just, I mean, like in WoD, the garrison was just a giant snowball with a fire in the middle of it, which didn't seem to have any effect on the snow. Fair enough. But anyway, I mean, at least Horde don't have to put up with gnomes, but they do have to put up with Tauren getting in your way. I mean, I don't have an issue with Tauren the same way as gnomes, but it is a bit of a problem when you're melee and you got a big fat cow in your face. No, they all look the same. Like, the only way I could tell what the different buildings were in my garrison was by learning where I'd put them. Like, whereas the Alliance ones, they all look different. You can tell what building it is just by looking at it. It doesn't matter whether you know where it is. They're just, and that's just obviously one expansion. All the cities are dull. Undercity is the same everywhere. You can get completely lost there. It's just a giant circle where it all looks the same. You know, Orgrimmar is just mud huts that all look the same. And is an unnecessarily awkward place to get around. But anyway, it really doesn't matter. It's just, I just found it very, very dull and uninteresting with ugly races. Well, old Orgrimmar still had mud huts that all look the same. Yeah, well, we'll just have to see how that works out. I mean, Sisters of the Moon is sort of okay because you get your retribution procs from people dying. How is Alliance dull? We have the things look different. There's variety in Alliance. We just have tedious gnomes blocking us up, which is a never-ending problem. They're like rats; they breed all the time. So, I mean, every time I manage to make the guild gnome free, another one pops up. So one of our warriors has changed back to gnome. He was gnome when I arrived. Eventually bullied him out of it, and he's gone back again now. He seems to think that it's useful for some reason. But anyway, I think I'll call it there because I say I definitely need to go off and do a mythic. I'll just sign up for hopefully a mythic +0 or something, and get my cash and see what that is, and then make sure that all my make sure my raid consumables are all ready for tomorrow for doing 2 sets of heroic, or at least for most of the bosses, heroic Tomb of Sargeras. So thanks for coming on. As I say, I'll keep you up to date on Twitter with what's going to happen at the weekend. It should be final boss, and obviously there'll be more details about that, I suppose, on Friday with the WoW Flash. But yeah, Twitter is always the one I'll sort of keep up to date. So thanks very much, and I shall see you later.